Sarah thought she was rescuing an ordinary stray cat that rainy October night. The little creature looked so helpless, so innocent, with its matted fur and desperate meows echoing through the alley. She'd never owned a pet before. But something about those eyes pulled at her heart. But as days passed, strange things emerged. The cat never purred. It refused all cat food but devoured raw chicken with disturbing intensity. Its eyes reflected light in a way that made Sarah's skin crawl. When Dr. Martinez, the city's most experienced veterinarian, examined the animal 3 weeks later, his face drained of all color. His hands trembled as he stepped back from the examination table, eyes wide with disbelief. "Ms. Chen," he whispered, barely able to form the words. "This is not a cat." What Sarah had found wasn't a domestic animal at all, and the revelation shocked everyone who heard the story. The rain came down in sheets that Thursday evening, turning the streets of downtown Portland into rivers of reflected streetlights. October's chill had settled deep into the bones of the city, and the wind carried the smell of wet pavement and dying leaves. Sarah pulled her coat tighter as she hurried through the parking garage after her shift at the hospital. She'd been on her feet for 12 hours straight, and every muscle in her body ached for home, a hot shower, and her warm bed. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows between the concrete pillars. Her sneakers splashed through puddles as she walked, keys already in hand. The garage was nearly empty at this hour, just a few scattered vehicles belonging to the night shift workers. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and Sarah quickened her pace. She loved her work as a nurse, but nights like these made her question why she'd chosen the evening rotation. The hospital paid better for these hours, and she needed every dollar to pay off her student loans. At 27, she lived alone in a small apartment across town, her life a simple routine of work, sleep, and occasional dinners with friends. Tonight felt different somehow. The air seemed heavier, charged with something she couldn't name. Maybe it was just exhaustion playing tricks on her mind. As she rounded the corner toward her car, a sound stopped her cold. A cry, weak and desperate. Sarah froze, listening. The rain pounded against the concrete, making it hard to hear anything else. She took another step, and there it was again. A tiny, pitiful meow that seemed to come from the shadows near the dumpsters. Her heart clenched. She'd always been a sucker for animals in distress, even though she'd never had the courage to adopt one herself. Her apartment didn't allow pets, and her schedule was too chaotic. But that sound, that helpless cry in the storm, pulled at something deep inside her. "Hello?" she called softly, moving toward the noise. The wind howled through the garage, and for a moment she wondered if she'd imagined it. Then she heard it again, louder this time, more insistent. Something was definitely there. Something small and scared, calling out for help in the darkness. Sarah knelt beside the dumpster, ignoring the cold water soaking through her scrubs. The smell of rotting garbage made her nose wrinkle, but she pushed past it, peering into the shadows. Two eyes stared back at her, glowing in the dim light. "Oh, you poor thing," she whispered. The creature was tiny, huddled against the concrete wall, its fur plastered to its body from the rain. It looked like a kitten, maybe a few months old, with orange and white markings barely visible through the grime. Its sides heaved with each breath, and it let out another pitiful cry. Sarah's nursing instincts kicked in immediately. This animal was in bad shape. She could see it was underweight, probably sick, definitely scared. Without thinking twice, she reached out slowly, speaking in soft, soothing tones. "It's okay, baby. I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe now." The animal didn't run. It just stared at her with those strange, luminous eyes, trembling violently. Sarah gently scooped it up, surprised by how light it felt. The poor thing couldn't weigh more than 2 pounds. She could feel its ribs through its wet fur, and its heart beat frantically against her palm. "What are you doing out here all alone?" she murmured, cradling it against her chest. The animal made a sound, but it wasn't quite a meow. Something about it seemed off, but Sarah was too focused on getting it warm and dry to analyze the noise. She tucked it inside her coat, feeling it nestle against her body heat. As she stood up, her mind raced. I know, my apartment doesn't allow pets," she said to the creature. "But we'll figure something out. I can't leave you here to die." The animal's claws dug into her scrub top, holding on as if understanding it had just been saved. Sarah hurried to her car, unlocking it with shaking hands. She grabbed an old towel from her gym bag in the trunk and wrapped the shivering creature carefully. Under the car's interior light, she got her first good look at it. The fur was matted and dirty, but underneath she could see orange and white stripes. Its ears were small and rounded, its face squished and almost flat. It had to be some kind of domestic cat, maybe a stray that had been abandoned. But those eyes. There was something about those eyes that made her pause. They were larger than she expected, set wider apart, and the way they caught the light seemed almost unnatural. "You've had a rough life, haven't you?" Sarah said softly, gently stroking the wet fur. The animal stared at her silently, not purring, not even trying to pull away, just watching her with an intensity that felt almost human. Sarah started the car, cranking up the heat. "Let's get you home and cleaned up. Then we'll figure out what to do with you." The drive home took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Sarah kept glancing at the bundle in the passenger seat, watching for any signs of distress. The animal had gone quiet, its eyes half closed, exhausted from whatever ordeal it had been through. "You're going to be okay," Sarah promised, though she wasn't sure if she was reassuring the creature or herself. Her mind spun with practical concerns. She'd need to buy cat food, a litter box, toys, a bed. The expenses piled up in her head, but she pushed the worry aside. She'd figure it out. She always did. When she finally pulled into her apartment complex, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. She carried the towel-wrapped bundle close to her chest, sneaking through the lobby and up the stairs. Her landlord, Mr. Peterson, was strict about the no pets policy, but what he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. Inside her small studio apartment, Sarah immediately ran a shallow bath of warm water. She'd dealt with hypothermia patients before and knew the dangers of warming someone up too quickly. The same principles should apply to animals, she reasoned. The creature didn't fight as she gently lowered it into the water. It just stood there, passive and trembling, as she carefully washed away the dirt and grime. The water turned brown, then black, revealing the true colors underneath. "There you are," Sarah murmured, smiling as orange and white stripes emerged. "You're actually quite pretty under all that dirt." After the bath, she wrapped the animal in fresh towels and blow-dried its fur on the lowest setting. It tolerated everything with an eerie calmness that Sarah attributed to exhaustion and trauma. Once it was dry and fluffy, she set it on her bed with a bowl of tuna from her pantry. The creature sniffed it cautiously, then ate with surprising delicacy, taking small bites rather than gulping it down like she'd expected. "I'll call you Ginger," Sarah decided, watching the animal eat. "Because of your pretty orange fur." Ginger looked up at her, those strange eyes gleaming, and made a sound that was almost like agreement. That first night, Sarah fell asleep with Ginger curled up beside her pillow, feeling a warmth in her heart she hadn't experienced in years. She'd finally found something to care for, something that needed her. The first week with Ginger transformed Sarah's life in ways she never expected. She stopped at a pet store the next morning, buying everything a cat could need: premium kitten food, a pink collar with a bell, a soft bed, toys, and a litter box. But Ginger proved to be a peculiar cat from the start. She refused to touch the expensive cat food Sarah had purchased, turning her nose up at both wet and dry varieties. Instead, she only ate raw chicken that Sarah bought from the butcher, tearing into it with an intensity that seemed excessive for such a small creature. "You're a picky eater," Sarah laughed, watching Ginger devour another raw chicken breast. "But I guess you've earned the right to be particular after what you've been through." Despite the odd eating habits, Ginger quickly became the center of Sarah's world. She'd wake up to find the cat staring at her with those luminous eyes, unblinking and intense. During the day, while Sarah worked, Ginger would apparently sleep, though Sarah began to notice strange things. Her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, mentioned hearing unusual sounds from Sarah's apartment. "It sounds like crying, mija," she said with concern. "Like a baby crying." Sarah brushed it off. "Cats can make all kinds of sounds. She's probably just lonely when I'm gone." Her best friend Maya came over for dinner one Friday night and met Ginger for the first time. The reaction was immediate and unsettling. "Sarah, that's the weirdest looking cat I've ever seen," Maya said, keeping her distance. "Are you sure it's not sick or something?" "She's fine," Sarah defended, scooping Ginger into her arms. She's just unique. But Maya's words planted a seed of doubt. That night, Sarah really looked at Ginger under the bright kitchen lights. The face was flatter than most cats, the eyes larger and set differently. The tail seemed too long, the paws too big for the body. The ears, now that she paid attention, didn't quite look right. "You're just a mixed breed," Sarah told herself firmly. "Plenty of cats look unusual." As days turned into weeks, Sarah documented everything on her phone. Photos of Ginger sleeping in sunbeams, videos of her playing with string, pictures of them cuddled together on the couch. She posted them on social media, beaming with pride at her new companion. The comments were mixed. "What breed is that?" "Your cat looks weird, Lowell. Beautiful rescue." "Good for you." "That doesn't look like a normal cat." Sarah ignored the negative responses, focusing on the bond she'd formed with Ginger. Every evening she'd come home to those watching eyes, and her heart would swell with love. She'd given up going out with friends, preferring to spend her free time with her new companion. Ginger never purred, but Sarah convinced herself that some cats just didn't. She'd read about it online. Not every cat purred. It was normal. Everything was normal, even when it clearly wasn't. The first truly strange incident happened during the third week. Sarah woke at 3 in the morning to a sound she'd never heard before. It wasn't a meow or even the crying her neighbor had mentioned. It was a growl, deep and guttural, coming from the foot of her bed. She sat up slowly, heart pounding, and saw Ginger silhouetted against the window. The cat's back was arched, not in the typical Halloween cat way, but differently. The spine curved in a pattern that made Sarah's stomach turn, and those eyes, catching the moonlight, glowed with an eerie green luminescence. "Ginger?" Sarah whispered. "What's wrong, baby?" The growling stopped immediately. Ginger turned, and just like that, she was a normal cat again, walking over to nuzzle against Sarah's hand. Sarah lay back down, heart still racing, telling herself it was just normal cat behavior. Cats growled at things outside. It was fine. Everything was fine. But the incidents continued. Ginger refused to use the litter box, instead scratching at the door until Sarah let her out onto the small balcony. When Sarah checked later, she found the plant soil disturbed, used like a bathroom in a way that seemed oddly deliberate and ritualistic. The raw chicken consumption increased dramatically. What started as a few ounces a day became nearly a pound. Sarah's grocery bills skyrocketed, and she found herself making daily trips to the butcher. "You got a big dog or something?" the butcher asked one afternoon, weighing out another 2 pounds of chicken thighs. "Just a cat," Sarah replied, feeling her cheeks flush. "She's a growing girl." The man raised his eyebrows but said nothing. At night, Ginger would disappear for hours. Sarah would wake to find her gone, then discover her perched on top of the refrigerator or inside the highest kitchen cabinet, places that should have been impossible for a cat to reach. The jumps were too high, too precise, too powerful. "How do you even get up there?" Sarah asked one morning, finding Ginger balanced on top of the doorframe, a full 7 feet off the ground. Ginger just stared down at her with those unsettling eyes. Maya visited again, this time with her boyfriend, Alex. His reaction was even stronger than Maya's had been. "Sarah, I don't want to freak you out," Alex said carefully, "but I grew up on a farm, and that's not a cat. I don't know what it is, but the proportions are all wrong. The way it moves, the way it looks at you." "That's not right," Sarah felt her defenses rise. "You're both being ridiculous. She's just a stray I rescued. She's probably a mix of different breeds. Have you taken her to a vet?" Maya pressed. "Not yet. I've been too busy with work." "Sarah, you need to take her. Soon." Maya's voice was serious. "Please, something's not right, and we're worried about you." After they left, Sarah tried to research unusual cat breeds online. She spent hours scrolling through images, trying to find something that matched Ginger's appearance. Nothing did. Every cat she found looked fundamentally different from the creature living in her apartment. The sounds got worse. Mrs. Rodriguez knocked on her door one evening, clearly distressed. "Mia, I'm sorry, but the sounds coming from your apartment at night are keeping me awake. It doesn't sound like a cat. It sounds like something else, something that shouldn't be in a building with families and children." Sarah apologized profusely, promising to take Ginger to the vet, though she didn't understand what her neighbor meant. To her, Ginger was quiet most of the time, almost eerily so, but that night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed watching Ginger in the darkness. The cat sat at the window, absolutely still, for hours, not grooming herself, not moving, just sitting and staring out at the city lights with a focus that felt wrong. Around 4 in the morning, Ginger made a sound. It wasn't a meow or a growl. It was something else entirely, something that made every hair on Sarah's body stand up. It sounded almost like a cough, but deeper, more resonant, carrying a power that no house cat should possess. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for her phone, searching for emergency vet clinics. Something was deeply wrong. She couldn't deny it anymore. Whatever Ginger was, she needed professional help, and she needed it soon. The question was, would Sarah like what she discovered? It happened on a Sunday afternoon, 3 weeks and 4 days after Sarah had found Ginger in the parking garage. Sarah was preparing lunch when she heard a crash from the living room. She rushed out to find her coffee table overturned, her laptop on the floor, and Ginger in the middle of the room, making that sound again, the deep, coughing roar that shook Sarah's chest. But this time, Maya was there. She'd stopped by unannounced with coffee and bagels, and now she stood frozen by the door, her face white as paper. Ginger's lips pulled back, revealing teeth that seemed too long, too sharp, too wrong. Her body had gone rigid, every muscle tensed in a way that made her look twice her normal size. The sound that came from her throat was primal, ancient, terrifying. "Sarah," Maya whispered, not taking her eyes off the animal. "Get away from it, slowly." But Sarah couldn't move. She stood there, watching this creature she'd loved and cared for, seeing it as if for the first time. This wasn't a cat. This wasn't even close to a cat. "We need to call someone," Maya said, her voice shaking. "Right now." "This isn't safe." Ginger's eyes locked onto Sarah's, and in that moment, Sarah saw something that broke her heart. Fear. The animal was scared, trapped in an environment it didn't understand, with people it didn't know how to communicate with. "Okay," Sarah said quietly, tears streaming down her face. "Okay, I'll make the call." Dr. Martinez's office was 40 minutes across town, in a part of Portland Sarah rarely visited. She'd called first thing Monday morning, explaining the situation as best she could without sounding crazy. The receptionist had fit her in for an emergency appointment that same day. Ginger sat in a borrowed cat carrier on the passenger seat, silent and watchful. Sarah had managed to coax her inside with raw chicken, and now the animal stared out through the metal bars with those unblinking eyes. "It's going to be okay," Sarah said for the 100th time, not sure who she was trying to comfort. Her hands gripped the steering wheel too tight, her knuckles white. She hadn't slept the night before, lying awake and replaying every strange moment with Ginger, all the signs she'd ignored, all the red flags she'd explained away because she'd fallen in love with something she didn't understand. The veterinary clinic was larger than she'd expected, a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and a pristine waiting room. Sarah checked in at the front desk, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah Chen with Ginger? For the emergency appointment." The receptionist smiled warmly. "Dr. Martinez will see you shortly. Please have a seat." Sarah sat in the corner, the carrier on her lap, watching other pet owners with their dogs and cats. Normal animals. Regular pets that purred and barked and behaved the way animals should behave. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Sarah's leg bounced nervously. She checked her phone, scrolled through old pictures of Ginger, felt her heart clench with every image. Ms. Chen. A vet tech appeared, clipboard in hand. "Dr. Martinez is ready for you now." Sarah stood, legs shaking, and followed the tech down a long hallway. With each step, the weight in her chest grew heavier. She was about to learn the truth, and somehow, she knew her life would never be the same. Dr. Martinez was a tall man in his 50s with kind eyes and steady hands. He greeted Sarah with a warm smile that immediately put her at ease. "Thank you for coming in on such short notice," he said, gesturing to the examination table. "Tell me about your cat." Sarah set the carrier down and began her story. She explained finding Ginger in the parking garage, the rescue, the bathing, the strange behaviors. As she talked, Dr. Martinez nodded thoughtfully, his expression neutral and professional. "Let's take a look," he said, opening the carrier door. Ginger emerged slowly, cautiously, her body low to the table. Dr. Martinez approached gently, speaking in soothing tones as he began his examination. He felt her bones, looked at her teeth, examined her ears and eyes. Sarah watched his face carefully. For the first few minutes, everything seemed routine, but then something changed. Dr. Martinez went very still. His hands hovered over Ginger's body, not touching, just staring. He leaned in closer, examining the bone structure, the skull shape, the placement of the eyes. His breathing changed, became faster, shallower. "Ms. Chen," he said quietly, "how long did you say you've had this animal?" "Almost 4 weeks." "Why? What's wrong?" Dr. Martinez didn't answer. Instead, he picked up Ginger, turning her over gently, examining her from every angle. His face had gone pale, and Sarah noticed his hands trembling slightly. He set Ginger down and stepped back, running a hand through his hair. Then he examined her again as if not believing what he was seeing the first time. He checked her paws, spreading the toes wide. He looked at her tail, measuring it against her body length. He opened her mouth, studying the teeth configuration for a long moment. "This can't be right," he muttered, more to himself than to Sarah. "What can't be right?" Sarah's voice rose. "Dr. Martinez, you're scaring me. What's wrong with my cat?" The veterinarian turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made Sarah's blood run cold. It was shock, mixed with disbelief, mixed with something that looked like fear. "Ms. Chen," he said slowly, carefully, as if choosing each word with precision, "I need to ask you something very important. Are you absolutely certain you found this animal in Portland?" "In the city." "Yes, of course." "In a parking garage downtown. Why?" Dr. Martinez took a deep breath, his professional composure cracking. "Because what you've brought me, what you've been keeping in your apartment and feeding raw chicken to for nearly a month." He paused, looking at Ginger, then back at Sarah. "This is not a domestic cat." The room spun. Sarah grabbed the edge of the examination table to steady herself. "What do you mean it's not a cat? Of course it's a cat. Look at it." "I am looking at it, Ms. Chen, very carefully. And I'm telling you, with 30 years of veterinary experience, this is not a cat. The bone structure is wrong, the teeth are wrong, the proportions are all wrong. The eye placement, the ear size, the tail length, everything." "Then what is it?" Sarah whispered. Dr. Martinez moved to his desk, pulling out a large reference book. He flipped through pages, then turned the book towards Sarah, pointing at a photograph. "Ms. Chen, if I'm not mistaken, what you have here is a juvenile fishing cat, and that is a very, very serious problem." Sarah stared at the photograph, then at Ginger, then back at the photograph. They matched. Perfectly. The room went silent, except for the sound of her heart breaking. Dr. Martinez pulled up a chair and sat down heavily, the book still open between them. His face was grave. "Fishing cats are not domestic animals," he began carefully. "They're wild cats native to South and Southeast Asia. India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Indonesia. They should not be in Portland, Oregon. They should not be in anyone's apartment." Sarah couldn't speak. She just stared at the photo in the book, seeing Ginger's face reflected back at her with painful accuracy. "They're called fishing cats because they hunt fish in wetlands and marshes. They're excellent swimmers, highly aggressive predators, and they can grow to be 20 to 35 pounds. What you have is probably only about 3 or 4 months old. She's going to get much bigger, much stronger, and much more dangerous." "Dangerous?" Sarah's voice cracked. "She's never hurt me. She's a baby," Dr. Martinez said gently. "Give it a few more months, when her hunting instincts fully develop, when she reaches sexual maturity. Fishing cats in captivity have seriously injured handlers. They're not meant to be pets. They're wild animals with wild instincts." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "But how did she end up in a parking garage in Portland?" Dr. Martinez's expression darkened. "That's the other problem? There's an illegal exotic animal trade in this country. People smuggle wild animals, sell them as pets to rich buyers who don't understand what they're getting into. When the animals get too big or too aggressive, they dump them, or they escape." He stood pacing now, his anger evident. "Someone either smuggled this cat into the country or bred it illegally. Either way, it's a federal crime. This animal shouldn't exist outside of a licensed facility or its natural habitat." "What happens now?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer would break her heart. "We need to contact the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service immediately. They'll need to take custody of the animal. There are facilities equipped to handle exotic cats like this, places where she can live safely with her own kind. I have to give her up?" Dr. Martinez's eyes softened with sympathy. "Ms. Chen, I understand you've formed an attachment, but this animal is not a pet. She's a wild fishing cat, an endangered species, and keeping her is illegal. More than that, it's dangerous. For you and for her. Can I just keep her? I'll get whatever permits I need. I'll build her a proper enclosure. It doesn't work that way. The permits take years and require proper facilities. And honestly, Ms. Chen, this cat deserves better than an apartment in Portland. She deserves to live in an environment suited to her species, with professionals who understand her needs. Sarah looked at Ginger, who sat quietly on the examination table, watching them both with those luminous eyes. She looked so small, so vulnerable. "How long do I have?" Sarah whispered. "I need to make the call today. They'll probably want to collect her within 24 to 48 hours. Less than 2 days." Sarah had less than 2 days left with the animal she'd come to love. Sarah drove home in a daze, Ginger quiet in the carrier beside her. Her mind couldn't stop spinning, couldn't process what she'd just learned. A wild cat. An illegal, endangered wild cat. Everything made sense now. The strange sounds, the unusual eating habits, the impossible jumps, the wrong proportions. All the signs had been there, and she'd ignored them all because she'd wanted so desperately to believe she'd rescued a normal cat. "What have I done?" she whispered to herself. That night, she sat on her bed with Ginger curled up beside her, gently stroking the soft fur. Each touch felt precious now, numbered, slipping through her fingers like sand. Her heart was being torn in 2 directions. Part of her wanted to run, to disappear with Ginger somewhere the authorities couldn't find them. She could move to a different state, change her name, keep this beautiful creature that had brought so much joy into her lonely life. But the rational part of her, the nurse part that had spent years learning to put others' needs before her own, knew what had to be done. Maya called 3 times. Sarah ignored all 3 calls. She couldn't talk to anyone right now. She couldn't hear Maya say, "I told you so," or offer sympathy that would only make everything hurt more. She thought about Dr. Martinez's words. Fishing cats needed wetlands, needed water, needed space to hunt and swim and be wild. What could she offer? A studio apartment with a bathtub and a balcony? It was cruel, really, keeping a wild animal in such a small space. And the danger. As much as Sarah didn't want to admit it, the truth was undeniable. Ginger was still young, still manageable, but in 6 months, a year? What would happen when those hunting instincts kicked in fully? When those claws and teeth weren't just for eating raw chicken? Sarah lay awake all night watching Ginger sleep. The cat's chest rose and fell peacefully, unaware that everything was about to change. In the moonlight, Sarah could see what she'd been blind to before, the wild power in that small body, the predator hidden beneath the cute exterior. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears soaking into her pillow. "I'm so sorry I can't be what you need." By morning, she'd made her decision. It was the hardest choice of her life, but she knew it was the right one. Sarah woke with the sunrise, her decision solid in her heart despite the pain. She called Dr. Martinez's emergency number. He answered on the second ring. "I want to do what's right for her," Sarah said, her voice hoarse from crying. "Please tell me she'll go somewhere good, somewhere safe." "I've already contacted the Wildlife Conservation Center in Northern California," Dr. Martinez assured her. "They have a specialized facility for small wildcats. She'll have acres to roam, pools for swimming, and eventually, if she's healthy, they might be able to include her in their breeding program to help conservation efforts." Sarah closed her eyes, picturing it. Open space, water, trees, everything a fishing cat should have. "When do they want to pick her up?" "Tomorrow afternoon. Can you bring her to my office at 2? "Yes, I'll be there." After hanging up, Sarah spent the day preparing. She took photos of Ginger in every corner of the apartment. She wrote down everything she knew about the cat's habits, her favorite foods, the times she was most active. She wanted whoever cared for Ginger next to understand her, to know her as more than just another wild animal. She bought 1 last pound of raw chicken and hand-fed it to Ginger piece by piece, memorizing the feel of the soft fur, the warmth of the small body, the weight of those trusting eyes watching her. "You're going to have a better life," Sarah promised, her voice breaking. "I promise you that." The drive to Dr. Martinez's office Tuesday afternoon was the longest 40 minutes of Sarah's life. She'd barely slept, spending the night lying beside Ginger, whispering apologies and promises into the darkness. Ginger seemed to sense something was wrong. She'd been unusually clingy all morning, following Sarah from room to room, those large eyes watching her every move. "I love you," Sarah said for the 100th time as she placed Ginger in the carrier. "I need you to know that. Everything I'm doing is because I love you." At the clinic, 2 officials from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service were waiting. They were professional but kind, explaining the transfer process, where Ginger would go, what would happen next. "She'll be quarantined first," one of them explained, "to make sure she's healthy. Then she'll be moved to the conservation center. They have 3 other fishing cats there. She'll finally have her own kind." Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They brought out a specialized carrier, much larger and sturdier than Sarah's borrowed one. Dr. Martinez helped transfer Ginger while Sarah watched, her hands clutched together so tightly her knuckles turned white. When Ginger was secured in the new carrier, Sarah knelt down one last time. Through the bars, she could see those luminous eyes staring at her, confused and frightened. "You're going to be okay," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. "You're going to have rivers and trees and space to run. You're going to be wild the way you were meant to be, and maybe someday you'll have cubs of your own, and you'll teach them to fish, and you'll live the life you deserve." She reached through the bars, stroking the soft head one final time. Ginger pressed against her hand, making a small sound that might have been recognition or might have been goodbye. Then the officials were lifting the carrier, thanking her for doing the right thing, walking toward their vehicle. Sarah watched them go, standing in the parking lot until the van disappeared around a corner. Then she stood there longer, because she couldn't bear to leave this spot, this last place she'd seen Ginger. The apartment felt unbearably empty. Sarah took the bus home, not trusting herself to drive. She walked through her door and was immediately struck by the silence. No scratching sounds from the bathroom. No eyes watching her from atop the refrigerator. Just emptiness. She picked up Ginger's food bowl and sat on the floor, holding it in her lap, crying harder than she'd cried in years. All the toys she'd bought, the bed that had never been used, the scratching post that still had tags on it. Everything was a reminder of what she'd lost. Maya came over that evening, bringing wine and pizza that Sarah couldn't eat. She just held Sarah while she sobbed, not saying, "I told you so," just being present in the grief. "You did the right thing," Maya said softly. "I know it hurts, but you did right by her." "I just wanted to save her," Sarah whispered. "I just wanted to help." "You did. You kept her alive until she could get to the right place." The first week was the hardest. Sarah found herself listening for sounds that never came. She'd buy raw chicken at the store before remembering she didn't need it anymore. She'd wake at 3 in the morning, reaching for a warm body that wasn't there. Dr. Martinez called after 10 days. "I heard from the conservation center. She arrived safely. She's healthy, adapting well to the quarantine space. They're optimistic about integrating her with their other fishing cats." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. "Thank you for telling me." "You did a brave thing, Miss Chen. Not many people would have made the choice you made." After hanging up, Sarah sat on her bed, looking at the photos on her phone. Ginger in the sunlight. Ginger playing with string. Ginger staring at the camera with those impossible eyes. She didn't delete them. They were proof that it had happened, that the love had been real, even if the circumstances had been wrong. Months passed. Spring arrived, bringing rain and renewal. Sarah adopted a regular domestic cat from the shelter, a sweet orange tabby named Marmalade, who purred constantly and demanded attention. It wasn't the same, but it filled the quiet spaces in her apartment. Dr. Martinez sent an update 6 months after the transfer. Ginger had been successfully integrated with 2 other juvenile fishing cats. She was thriving, swimming in the facility's pools, hunting live fish, displaying all the natural behaviors of her species. "They say she's one of the most active cats they have," Dr. Martinez wrote. "Happy and healthy. You gave her that chance." Sarah read the message 3 times, tears streaming down her face. But this time, they were tears of relief and joy. Ginger was living the life she deserved. Wild. Free. Whole. The grief faded slowly, replaced by something gentler. Sarah understood now that love sometimes meant letting go, that doing the right thing often hurt the most, that the best gift she could give wasn't keeping Ginger close, but setting her free. She'd learned to recognize the difference between saving and owning, between helping and harm. The lessons came at a price she'd never forget, etched into her heart with every memory of those luminous eyes watching her in the darkness. A year after finding Ginger in that parking garage, Sarah stood in her apartment, holding marmalade and looking out at the city lights. She thought about that rainy October night, about the tiny creature crying in the shadows, about every choice she'd made since then. People often asked if she regretted rescuing Ginger. The answer was always no. She regretted not recognizing the signs sooner. She regretted the weeks Ginger spent confined in a small apartment instead of running free. But she never regretted the rescue itself. Without her intervention, Ginger might have died in that parking garage, or worse, been sold to someone who would have kept her caged forever. Sarah had given her a chance at the life she deserved. That was worth every moment of heartbreak. Dr. Martinez called occasionally with updates. Ginger was now fully grown, a magnificent fishing cat who spent her days swimming and hunting, exactly as nature intended. The conservation center had successfully bred her with one of their males. She had 2 cubs, healthy and thriving, adding to the genetic diversity of their species. "You should be proud," Dr. Martinez told her during one call. "Because of your choice, there are now 3 more fishing cats in the world instead of 1. Sarah smiled through her tears. Holding marmalade close, sometimes the hardest truths bring the most important lessons. Love isn't about possession. It's about doing what's best for those we care about, even when it breaks our hearts. Especially when it breaks our hearts. That rainy October night had changed Sarah forever. She'd learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is learning when to let go.